Yes, I'm back. Welcome, everybody, to day 6 of the Revitalize Your Midlife Symposium. I'm Kat Corchado, and we have an amazing discussion today about the microbiome. But before we get there, I wanted you to understand why I wanted to do this symposium. And it's a way for us to journey together through these things that we call midlife that affect all of us. I'm a lifelong learner. I feel as though I can learn from all of these speakers, and I have. So I've learned some quick tips, some great information that can maybe make my life just a little bit better. However, June is summertime and it's also my birthday month. And yes, I celebrate the whole month of June. So I wanted to be able to bring this symposium forward as a way to give back to health, wellness, fitness, but also to help me celebrate my birthday. So midlife is a time of reflection, growth, and opportunity. It's a stage where we can harness our experiences, embrace change, and step into the best version of ourselves with confidence and grace. My mission in creating this symposium is to provide you with the tools, insights, and inspiration needed to navigate this exciting chapter of your life. So if you walk away with one golden nugget from this week, then I feel like this was a success. For those of you that can't join us live, there's no need to worry. Every moment of the Revitalize Your Midlife Symposium will be available for replay. So whether you're seeking strategies to enhance your health, fitness, or overall well-being, this symposium is your gateway to a midlife filled with vitality and joy. I'm also letting you know that this is being sponsored by Small Space Pilates, where you can benefit from fitness in your own home and ensure that everyone can find the space to improve flexibility, strength, and mental well-being. Now, I have all of these speakers on my website. So if you go to smallspacepilates.com/revitalize, you can click on their picture and it'll go right to their website and you can find out more about them. So I am thrilled to introduce Dr. Mandy Patterson. She's the founder of 2 online wellness consulting businesses. She is also an occupational therapist, certified holistic health coach, functional medicine practitioner, doctor of naturopathy, yoga instructor, and mom of 6. Oh man, that made me tired. She shows women that they can have lasting, vibrant health. Mandy bridges the division between conventional and alternative medicines, creating a simple, holistic health plan that shows women that achieving wellness can be invigorating and fun. Her mission is to empower women and couples to dig deep in their quest for optimal health, to discover their confidence, and to help them commit to mindfulness and a vibrant lifestyle. Dr. Mandy, welcome to the symposium.
Hi, Kat. Thank you for having me here.
Of course, I'm so excited for this discussion. So I have to tell you that I saw a documentary and it was all about the microbiome, and I fell down the rabbit hole with it.
Yes.
Because even though I've heard the microbiome, I didn't understand what it did, what it was, and how it can help or hurt our health. So, Dr. Manny, can you explain to our listeners and to me especially
Yeah.
what the microbiome is and why it's important to our health?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so, our microbiome is just this vast world that, like, in the last probably 10 years, more and more information and research has been coming out on it. And it is quite a fascinating world. And in fact, there are trillions of more cells in our gut than like our actual like being. It's fascinating. So it's its own planet, really, inside our body. And I like to frame it for people around that it's almost like our fertile soil. So, and what's going in is so important. The food that we're putting into our bodies and that we're eating, all of those things like hydration can have a really huge impact on the microbiome. And what is really interesting is one of my friends, Dr. Sabine Hazen, she is a gastroenterologist. she actually was doing a lot of work around COVID to see what was going on with microbiomes. And what she found is that people that had a severe illness, she started looking at things and saw that bifidobacterium, which is prolific in our gut microbiome, that it was plummeting in these cases. And so it had a direct correlation between illness and how people actually fared,
Mhm.
as far as if they did get illness. So it's a really, really fascinating space. And, I've learned from Dr. Alessio Fasano. He's an Italian pioneer in the microbiome, gastroenterologist and researcher. And he said, I like this because it really just, I think, makes it easier to wrap your head around. But he said, your gut is not Las Vegas. What happens in the gut does not stay in the gut. So,
I
yeah.
love that. I
Yeah.
love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. And like it makes sense. So like what we're putting into our bodies and our guts, like it doesn't just stay in there. It impacts us
Mhm.
systemically. And like as we're talking about midlife and the impact on our hormones, that is a
Mhm.
huge piece for women's health.
Oh, wow. So, Dr. Mandy, are we all born, is our our microbiome, are we all born with a healthy microbiome as a child?
So that is such a good question. And in fact, the research that I've done, and there's a real direct correlation between how a baby is born, if it's a vaginal birth versus a C-section.
Mhm.
Another really, really interesting piece is moms that breastfeed versus those that bottle feed. We do know that people that do have more robust microbiomes were generally probably vaginal births, and they actually were also breast. So, there's things there that we can't even control, obviously, when we were born
Mhm.
and come into the world. But we do know that that is an important piece.
Mhm.
And, the expression of that we see many years down the road when we get into our 30s and our 40s and beyond. So,
Mhm.
what our moms do in utero, really can impact the health of the baby many
Mhm.
years later.
I love that answer because that starts to make this picture very clear for me. Dr. Mandy, can you explain, we hear bacteria, we kind of go, ooh, we kind of do this. But there's bacteria in our microbiome that does good stuff. So can you
Yes.
explain that a little bit?
Absolutely. So yeah, like like we're created magnificently, like our creator that created us, and so I really like to frame it around that, is that the human body always wants to find balance, and it's
Mhm.
always working to keep balance for us. And so yes, we have this interesting world of bacteria, fungi, even from a parasitic side of things. There's good guys, right? There's good guys and there's not so good guys. Really, really, what makes a huge difference here is what we're doing from a lifestyle standpoint that impacts the microbiome. And so, we have many factors that work against us in modern day life. And
Mhm.
that's because we live in a really rather stressed out, busy world. There's constant pressure. We don't really get much downtime, and it's really hard to
Mhm.
prioritize, especially if you've got a busy job and a family. And
Mhm.
even our kids, I feel like it's a real problem. So we have that. And what's really interesting is this was an area of my own work when I was doing my thesis. I did it on digestive enzymes. And
Mhm.
so here's an interesting fact for the listeners tonight. But basically, like, by the time we're about 30 years of age, we're missing about half of our digestive enzymes, which are powerhouses for optimizing digestion, overall immune health. There's ties in there to cardiovascular health.
Mhm.
Really interesting. And so, we have to work hard to put good things back in. And we do that through
Mhm.
our diet, do that through proper stress reduction, because we know that
Mhm.
when we live in a busy, stressed out state all the time, we're wearing down our stomach lining and those digestive enzymes.
Yeah.
which are so important for metabolism and assimilation of nutrients in our systems. You know, I
Mhm.
like to talk about even the mitochondria, those little powerhouse cells that
Yes.
back in high school biology, right, we all learned
Mhm.
about, but it's so important as we age, and how that impacts
Mhm.
aging gracefully.
Mandy, how would I know if I'm going about my life? What kind of signs are there that maybe my microbiome isn't functioning the way it should?
Yeah, that's a good question, Kat. So here's the thing. You know, sometimes people might not know it. They might have frequent infections, like immune system challenges. But, you know, for the majority of people, what I hear a lot of is, you know, they have problems after digesting meals. Like they might have abdominal distension, like gut, like bloating, you
Mhm.
know, and two, like if we talk about poop, which we got to talk about poop on here as a naturopath, you know, diarrhea, constipation, like
Mhm.
gassiness and bloating, you know, those are all real signs that, you know, things aren't good. Also, another thing that's like a myth, really, is stomach acid secretion. So, a lot of times people will have reflux and think
Mhm.
that they have too much stomach acid, but usually it's they don't have enough. So, if they're going to the pharmacy and getting PPIs, like those proton pump inhibitors, like
Right.
there's so many on the market and they're taking those,
Mhm.
they're further suppressing and driving down the acidity in their stomach, which is causing even greater
Mhm.
issues. So, so that's a little pro for
Wow. You said so many things. My mind's going like
you.
this.
Good.
So we get in our 30s, we've lost some of those microorganisms in our gut.
Yeah.
How do we get them back? How do we invite those little critters back in so to help our health?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So, as a functional medicine practitioner, I've been trained to test and not guess, right? Now, if you came to me and you were like, oh, I'm struggling with these things, what can I do from a food standpoint? You know, I would tell you, you know, I really believe in eating from the rainbow. So, eating abundant fruits and vegetables
Mhm.
every day, like 9 to 12 servings, which for a lot of people, that's a lot, right?
Mhm.
Also, getting quality protein. So, as women, age, like we really have to work to keep our blood sugar balance under control.
Mhm.
So that's another piece. But like if I do a deep dive into somebody's microbiome, I do comprehensive stool testing, and it basically, so you take like a little poop sample out. It's kind of like a science experiment, and you ship it off to the lab, right? And then we can actually look at it and see what is going on, like from a microbiome balance, like in like what
Mhm.
guys are like, how they're all like cohabiting together. We can see
Mhm.
like if there's pathogenic bacteria, or if there's parasites. You know, those can cause a real problem for people, especially if they have a blunted immune system.
Mhm.
So like when we approach things, we usually call it the 5 R's in functional medicine. And the first step is to remove things that aren't good. So that would look like removing sugar. For some people, gluten is problematic. And I will be honest with you, the longer that I've been in practice, the more I think people have problem with gluten. And that's
Mhm.
because for a couple different reasons, but it is heavily sprayed with glyphosate in the United States, which is Roundup.
Yes.
So, and our bodies just do not like that.
Mhm.
So, the other piece of that is too, for some, it's just inflammatory, you know, in general. Dairy might be another one. Dairy's hard because probably 75% of the people on the planet are lactose intolerant. And
Mhm.
as we age, it gets harder and harder for us to digest dairy.
Mhm.
So, you know, a lot of times I might suggest like maybe taking some sort of enzymes to help
Mhm.
facilitate that process and really optimize digestion.
Wow. Dr. Mandy, if someone is always getting sick and they feel like, oh, I've been around kids or I was traveling or whatever. If they're always sick, is looking at someone's immune system or maybe looking at their microbiome, is that kind of a trigger for you going, let's look there?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, so I, prior to having my own practice, I worked in the hospital setting for many, many years. So I have a keen eye from a conventional lens, but then I also have the functional eye as well. And a lot of times when I see suppressed immune systems, I go back to the gut, because a massive portion of our immune system is in our gut. And there's usually things that are off, like imbalances there, that we need to correct, and sometimes it's micronutrients. And the challenging part is because of all those toxins that are coming at us all the time, along with, stress, and then even standard American diet, it just wears down that gut lining. And I'm sure maybe some of the listeners have heard about leaky gut, right? So
Yes.
leaky gut happens when those digestive secretions get worn down. We start getting little micro tears throughout our stomach lining, and people end up with food sensitivities. So,
Yes.
and it's to, like, you might hear of a friend who literally is like, has sensitivities to everything under the sun. It's because the gut needs to be healed. Like, you've got to go in, you've got to balance it, with certain foods, and like other, like, herbals and like other supplements can help. And then what you do is you go in and you seal off that gut. So it's, it has its fence back, because it's almost like
Right.
a fence that we have along that microbiome barrier. So,
Dr. Mandy, we have a question from Donna Bender. She said, can you talk about antibiotics and gut health?
yes, I absolutely can talk about antibiotics and gut health. So here's the challenge with antibiotics. So a lot of times we see people end up immunosuppressed because they keep being given antibiotics. And honestly, in my practice with middle-aged women, a lot of times we'll go back into their history, because, like, again, I'm like a detective. So I'm going in and looking at those root causes that are going on. And we'll see people have a really lengthy history with antibiotics. So antibiotics are one of those things that, like, wear down that gut lining. It's that wear and tear over time. And then it just really ends up, it temporarily fixes the situation, but a lot of times we'll just see these recurrent infections over and over. And that's because we're literally just putting a Band-Aid on it, right?
Right.
So, like, a lot of people need remediation if they do an antibiotic. I do like probiotics. I think probiotics have a place in time, but you need to use it strategically, and you want to make sure you're getting really good quality strains. And that's why it's helpful to have a deeper dive into that microbiome to know, like, what your body's needing more of, from a
Absolutely.
probiotic strain standpoint.
Can you talk about the difference between a prebiotic and a probiotic for the audience?
Yeah, so prebiotics, like, those are going to be more of your foods, like, coming from like nutrients that we would get from different fibers that are really beneficial and helpful. And I like to say, like, prebiotics and probiotics, you need both of them, like, to an extent. Prebiotics are kind of like that fertilizer we're putting on the soil in our gut, that it really boosts the microbiome. And then you have the where am I going with this? Probiotics. And probiotics, there's different strains of those guys that all kind of work to achieve balance in the body. And so, like, Akkermansia is one of them. So, interestingly enough, Akkermansia is really intimately tied in with blood sugar levels. And a lot of times I see people like that being depleted. And so, like, you can go in and add probiotics in from that standpoint. So, does that make sense? Yeah.
It does. So we're so used to kind of diagnosing ourselves a little bit. Do you feel like taking a prebiotic or a probiotic should come from someone like yourself or from a doctor before we just go out and buy something that we think would work?
Yeah, that's a great question, Kat. So here's the challenge. Anybody can go on Amazon and order anything that they want. It gets shipped to their house within 2 days. But the challenge is we don't really know who's selling it to us. We don't know how long it sat on a shelf. And most people really aren't educated in vetting really good companies that are looking out for our best interest. So I really do feel like it is helpful. In fact, on my website, I have a full script dispensary where you guys could go in and see all my protocols, and I actually make recommendations around really good companies and products.
Mhm.
So I do think it's really valuable. I know not everybody has access to like somebody that they can trust, but
Mhm.
I think that it makes sense to make sure that you're getting the right things for what your needs are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have another question from Denise Millay. Um, do you see a place for vitamin supplements in our diets?
Yes, absolutely. So here's the thing, you can get a lot of information from your basic labs. And this is labs that you would have run at your doctor's office maybe annually. If you have a really good practitioner who's functionally oriented or even like integrative, they're going to have a keen eye from a functional standpoint on what labs should look like. And you can see if you have deficiencies. So, for instance,
Mhm.
vitamin D is one of them that I like to test on a lot of people. I know there's a lot of controversy around this, and I really like
Mhm.
people to go get their vitamin D from the sunshine, but not
Mhm.
everybody can just get their needs met that way. I'm actually one of those people. I actually do genetics and nutrigenomics. I run
Mhm.
that in my practice to really help people optimize health. And one thing that even came up on my own labs was that I'm a really
Mhm.
bad converter. So I need much higher amounts of vitamin D than the average
Mhm.
person. So having not only your basic labs, but even maybe knowing your genetics, nutrigenomics is
Mhm.
really valuable. Another thing that I can see is like, if there's a need for more B vitamins, your MCV is actually a level you can see on your labs. And a lot of times when that's trending higher, we know that there's probably more of a need for B vitamins.
Mhm.
Magnesium's another really easy one to test with red blood cell magnesium.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I do think supplements have a place. I do believe that because of the toxic world that we live in and the busy, fast paced world, I do think
Mhm.
that supplementation really is valuable when used
Yeah,
strategically.
absolutely. I've been chronically low in vitamin D, and I was also told by a doctor that I could sit outside all day. I don't recommend that, by the way, but he
Yes.
said you would never get enough vitamin D. So, is he trying to say that I'm not a good converter?
Yeah, yeah. So some of us just aren't, we're not great at it. And so we
Mhm.
have higher need for vitamin D. So, and you can get vitamin D from food too.
Yes.
As a naturopath, I really encourage people to get everything they can from clean food. Because I
Mhm.
would much rather you spend money on your quality food than like buying all these supplements. Because I've
Mhm.
seen people come to my practice, they have like a 10-page document of all the supplements that they're on. And I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't think that we need to go that extreme. But I
Mhm.
do really feel like, yeah, it does have its place.
Yeah. What types of foods that you know of can help, I don't want to say recreate, but help repair our microbiome?
Oh, that's a
Like
great
just in
question.
the nutrition realm.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so we could talk about this all night, but if I really have to like condense it for you guys, again, like fruits and vegetables, like quality fruits and vegetables, like get them from
Mhm.
your farmer, a local farmer you can trust, or a
Mhm.
farming CSA. My husband and I are part of one in our town in Indiana. And so eating the rainbow is so important, like we talked about, for that fiber and those phytonutrients and antioxidants.
Mhm.
Another thing, like from a gut healing side of things, that people are really struggling, like with gut issues, bone broth, making your own bone broth can be so valuable. It's literally medicinal. And so
Mhm.
that's like one food that I really love and I really help people incorporate into their diets. It's
Mhm.
summertime right now, so it's a little harder to drink and sip bone broth, but it
Mhm.
can be so good. Some other things are omegas. We're so deficient as a society. So like
Mhm.
getting some flax seeds and chia seeds. Chia seed is really great for gut healing. It's really
Mhm.
soothing to the gut. Um,
Mm.
and another food that comes to mind that some might not think about, because it's like a lot of people don't eat it, but okra is
Mhm.
literally mucilaginous like chia. And so it really helps to coat that gut lining and
Mhm.
soothe it. Um, And then I love herbs and spices. Like
Yes.
turmeric is a powerhouse
Mhm.
of a nutrient. Cinnamon helps with women as we age and helps with
Mhm.
blood sugar balance. So helps with that. And like really just so many different herbs and spices
Mhm.
that you could get, can be so good, like cayenne pepper and like,
Mhm.
those kinds of things can be so helpful.
I had heard that, this is probably not the right word, but fermented food, like pickled stuff, is good for your gut. Is
It
that
is
true?
it is so good for the food. And so like when we're talking about prebiotics and stuff, like, fermented food is packed with those wonderful nutrients. And
Mhm.
so like, making your own cabbage, like actually make that myself. It's so easy to do. Other things like I'm not sure if the listeners like kimchi, but kimchi's a great one. Cabbage, like
Oh, yeah.
Korean, it's so good, right?
Yes.
And then, there's so many different things that you can make fermented
Mhm.
wise. Um, you know, so very easy to add into the diet.
Mhm.
And really we don't need that much. So like
Mhm.
maybe people are easing into it, maybe go a little slower because
Mhm.
just throwing it all at our gut might make it a little upset, could be a little bit much for it. But like coconut yogurt is, making your
Mhm.
own coconut yogurt, sauerkraut, like uh,
Yes.
so many different things. So
Before we go through our I called it halftime.
you guys
Before
need a
we
pause.
take a break,
Yes.
um, Donna said her question is, "What are your thoughts on apple cider vinegar?"
Yes, Donna, that's a great question. I love apple cider vinegar. And I tell all of my people that I work with, I'm like, it's so important to have as we get ready for our meal. Because again, a lot of us are really depleted. We need that extra acidity. And if you don't like apple cider vinegar, another really good alternative is bitters. So
Mhm.
bitters are essentially just bitter herbs that they make into tinctures.
Mhm.
I actually prefer bitters because I'm not a real big ACV person myself. I don't
Mhm.
love it like just drinking it like with water even, but I do love bitters.
Mhm.
And I think they're fabulous. And I think pretty much everybody should have them with every meal if they can.
Thank you, Dr. Mandy. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. If you just joined us, we are talking to Dr. Mandy Patterson about our microbiome, and this is the Revitalize Your Midlife Symposium. If you have any questions, you can pose them in the chat, and we will try to get to them. And Dr. Mandy you don't mind me calling you that, do you?
That's perfect. You call me
I'm
whatever.
calling you Dr. Mandy. Will do her best to answer those questions. So I do have to say with kimchi, I was in the military and I
Yeah.
was stationed over in Korea, and they use the kimchi's like their side dish,
Yes.
like we do with salad. And
Yep.
I'd never had kimchi before. It is really, really good. I'm just gonna say, I'm putting it out there.
It is so
Um,
good. And another thing that because I was thinking about all the fermented foods I actually make. So another one that's really easy to do, and I can share some of these recipes with you guys if you want them. But I have 6 kids that are 22 down to 10, and I'm always trying to pack nutrition into them. One thing that I make that they absolutely love is we call them dilly carrots. So you can actually ferment carrots. I slice them up into like little wedges, and then I
mhm,
put dill in it, and you really just put like you put salt water in with it and let them
mhm.
ferment for like a week.
Oh, wow.
And then my kids love them, and they have a little bit of a taste like a dill pickle because they've got dill.
Mhm.
But that's like one like really easy thing. So if anybody has kids here, and they're trying to
Mhm.
work on, getting better nutrition into them, that might be a good start
Mhm.
place, because I know some kids would be like, ew, when it comes to kimchi and sauerkraut.
It's just, I mean, it's just fermented vegetables. I mean,
Yeah.
one of my favorite is cucumber kimchi. I
Yeah.
love it's so
So
good.
good. Yes.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about how your microbiome impacts your mental health and cognitive
Oh
function,
my
or
goodness.
does it?
Yeah, so this is a great, great question. So, yes. So here's the thing. If we are like, if we're eating good foods all of the time and we're still struggling, because again, a lot of us have dysbiosis or leaky gut just from modern
Mhm,
day living, right? There's so many things that we can't control. But that is going to impact, like, the level of wellness in our gut is going to impact all the other cells of our body, because if our body's not adequately breaking down and assimilating nutrients, then the rest of our body's going to suffer. So, like, from a brain health standpoint, this is so important. And so, for the
mhm,
longest time, we always thought that the brain talked to the gut, but actually, we know it's bi-directional. So, the gut actually talks to the brain as well.
mhm,
And over 75% of serotonin is actually generated in our gut. So, yeah, right? So a lot, and that's our feel good hormone, right? Like our feel
mhm,
good, like doing great, and all of that. So when we have these gut challenges going on, it really does have a direct impact on our mental health.
mhm,
And we know that women, as we age, like, we have many things that are coming up, and stressors and all those things. And so over time, like, we can end up with some depression or like anxiety.
mhm.
And that's just like usually because I like to always go back to the gut and kind of look at that. It's really, really important to assess that.
Yeah. I think what you're saying to me, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that the heart is number 1, but the microbiome is number 2,
Oh my
like
gosh. Yes.
in as far as importance is concerned in our body.
Well, and then the other piece of it from a midlife standpoint is, the microbiota plays a major role in our
Mhm,
reproductive systems, and endocrine systems in a woman's lifetime. So, and it's always interacting with estrogen and
mhm,
testosterone and insulin and other hormones. And so, if we have that imbalance in the gut composition, it
mhm,
can lead to disease and dysfunction,
mhm.
and like some of the mental health challenges we were just talking about. So,
How does I just had Dr. Lakeisha come on yesterday. She was talking about perimenopause and menopause.
yep.
How does that affect when we're going into perimenopause and menopause? Does are the if we have a gut issue, is
Yep.
it exacerbated by the hormonal imbalances of perimenopause and menopause?
Absolutely, because as we're getting older, our hormones are starting to kind of go down, right? Like, they're
Mhm,
slowly, they don't just fall off a cliff, which can feel like that for some women, especially women that deal
mhm,
with hot flashes and like a lot of those challenges from an adrenal
mhm,
standpoint. So yeah, so whenever our gut is off, like, then we start to see other things like from a hormonal side, because
mhm,
again, there's so much that's generated in our gut that's going on all of the time. Our immune system, we've
mhm,
got, neurotransmitters that
mhm,
are being generated there. And so there really is, we can see that. And so, especially as women age, I feel like blood sugar balance becomes even more critical. Um,
mhm,
so making sure that, we're starting our morning off with a really good, healthy, protein packed meal. And
mhm,
as we age, we have higher amounts of protein that we need from a dietary standpoint. So, and I know a lot of women don't like to eat when they first get up, but it is really
mhm,
important, even if it's just something small, to kind of get the
mhm,
metabolism going. And that really
mhm,
helps to establish blood sugar levels throughout the day. And we know how intimately tied in blood sugar levels are with hormones as well. So,
right. I was kind of doing wishful thinking, and when you were talking, I was like, wow, if we really treat our gut and repair our gut, that maybe the hot flashes and all those other things wouldn't be so bad.
Yeah.
Maybe that's wishful thinking on my part.
Well, here's the thing. A lot of times this goes back to our adrenal system, okay? So we'll take a little break from the gut, but the adrenal system and the thyroid system are very intimately connected. And what happens is cortisol levels can really have an impact on those downstream hormones. And so for women here, cortisol is kind of like our master hormone. And when we're getting up in the morning, that's when our cortisol levels are coming up and they're getting us out of bed to start the day. And what happens is if we aren't eating a really good quality meal at the start or having enough protein, that can kind of skew cortisol throughout the day. And that's really connected in with those blood sugar levels. So for a lot of women that are struggling with hot flashes and those things, I really do feel like in many cases it's tied back to cortisol, dysregulated cortisol levels, stressed out adrenals, where we're just putting too many stressors onto that
Stressors.
adrenal system, and then things kind of get flipped upside down, and then like those symptoms are side effects of that, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah, it very much does. We have a question from Denise. She said, how does our microbiome affect our neurological system?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So even kind of going back to the gut and the brain are always talking with one another, right? And if our gut is not primed and in like the best optimal health, then that is going to directly impact from a neurological standpoint all these other things. So when we talk about the nutrients that we need that are cofactors for that mitochondria, so the powerhouses of our cell to like churn out that energy that we need to sustain us throughout the day. A lot of times there's micronutrient deficiencies, there's heavy metal toxicity that are directly impacting that brain as well. And so, and sometimes with people, like when we talk about basic labs, like the MCV, which is the microcrepuscular corpuscular volume, when we see that, we can see if that's from a balancing side of things, if that's higher or lower. A lot of times we can see when it's high, then we need more B vitamins, for to run from a neurological standpoint. And people can have side effects of that, like sometimes they can feel almost faint and not have that energy. So so there's a lot of things there that we could dive into, but that's
God,
kind of
there's so much that the microbiome does that affects so many things in our body. When I watched the documentary about the microbiome, and it talked about how it could be related to other diseases. So can you talk about the relationship between our microbiome and chronic diseases like diabetes or heart disease?
Absolutely. So here's the thing, going back to our garden and what we're growing and thinking about the gut as this garden that we're tending to, right? And like when we're not giving it what it needs, and that can be for many different reasons, right? Stressors, the foods that we're eating that don't agree with us, the toxins. So a lot of times I see from a micronutrient deficiency standpoint, like depleted minerals, that kind of goes hand in hand with heavy metal toxicity. So what happens from a cellular side of things is if we have too much mercury on board, for instance, like that's a big one, or aluminum, those are competing for the cellular sites on our cells. And where nutrients would normally come in, heavy metals can like impact that. And it's almost like this lock and key where those heavy metals grab onto. And so we end up more in a toxic environment. And so like when we see that, we can see a lot of times that people that might have cancer or infertility, they have real acidic systems, and meaning that it's perfect ground for inflammation in the body. So all disease and dysfunction in the body goes back to imbalances, right? So, and so like, for instance, like hypertension, right? That's one that a lot of people struggle with and are challenged with. A huge piece of that is just not having adequate minerals. Like magnesium is huge. And over 75% of people on this planet are probably magnesium deficient, maybe even higher. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah.
That's huge. That's a big number.
Yeah. And if you think about like the cheap seed oils that are in our grocery stores, like vegetable oil, canola oil, all of those like are like really inflammatory foods, and it's added to so much of our foods at restaurants, in
Yes.
other places, and so that's driving inflammation as well.
Dr. Mandy, if I go to the doctor, I feel like I'm having a gut issue. I'm not sure what it is. Are doctors well versed in talking about the microbiome, or are they more, and I'm talking in general from what you've seen, or are they like, oh, here's a script and give me something to settle my stomach?
Yeah, unfortunately, so I see a lot of gut cases, and a lot of cases where, they've been to every specialist. They are unable to like get to the root of what's going on. And in fact, this is very near and dear to my heart. And the whole reason I got into functional medicine is because my son, my oldest one, he was born 3 months premature, weighed 1 pound and 14 ounces, and ended up with 2 bowel surgeries and an ileostomy for a period of time. So, unfortunately, most doctors do not have an understanding of the microbiome and the challenges that there are. And they really like don't understand the nutritional piece, or they just don't have training in it, right? It's not to downplay them as specialists and experts in their field, but they're trained to
Right.
go from a pharmaceutical side of things. So I do see a lot of people are, I've got a lot of people with celiac, and even gluten sensitivity, and then they will end up on steroids and other very, very expensive medications that are, from an immune side of things, like, I mean, ridiculously expensive.
Right.
So I would suggest to the listeners tonight, like if they really do have gut issues, or like, just wanting to improve their immune system or whatever, make sure you like do your research, look for somebody that's well vetted, that you know how they think, and that they're willing to have like a conversation with you about that, right? Because a lot of times we're just dismissed when we go in for a doctor's visit that's roughly 7 minutes long. Like if you tell them,
I don't think it's 7 anymore. I think it's 5.
yeah, probably 3 actually. But the challenge is like if you tell them you're constipated, they'll be like, "Oh, well, okay." But like really, people need to understand that you need to be pooping like 2 or 3 times a day. You got to take out your trash, or your trash starts accumulating, and it's not good. It's not good.
I love that. Take out the trash.
Yeah.
So, Dr. Mandy, can an unhealthy microbiome contribute to weight gain or obesity?
Absolutely, we know that. Even from a genetic things, we know that, certain people are just more prone to obesity. And a lot of times those people they're poor methylators, which basically means, from a methylation side of things, is from a toxin side of things, how good are we at detoxifying? And some of us are really sluggish. And I'm saying that for myself because my weight has always been something I've struggled with since I was a young kid. But we do know, like I even know with myself, I'm not really a good detoxifier. And so I have to work extra hard in the foods that I eat, the practices that I do, like infrared sun is like one of those that can like really help like detox for those that aren't like really good sweaters, or have that challenge. So yeah, it's really interesting because if you dive into scientific research, you will see that people that struggle with more obesity, like diabetes, their microbiomes are not as robust. So there is a correlation between the robustness of the microbiome and like actual like weight. So
Yeah. How would I know if I'm a good detoxifier?
that's a good question. So So genetic testing is very helpful, and that's actually one of the services I offer in my practice. I work with a company. Actually, I teach for them. It's called Intellex DNA, and they do a deep dive into the genome. And the thing that I love about their test is they give you not only nutraceutical and lifestyle suggestions, but also pharmaceutical. So if you were to go in and need a surgery, you would be able to hand the report to the anesthesiologist and say, these are my unique genes, and these are the drugs that are actually going to work for me. But a
Right.
great way to look at detox pathways would be genetics, and even like hormonal tests like Dutch hormones can give you a lot of really valuable information on how you're detoxing.
Let's take a question. Donna has asked, do you think high colonics are healthy to get rid of all the toxins?
Yeah, so I actually do like colonics. I think they can be really, really helpful. A lot of people just don't have that resource available near them. And honestly, like it can be a little uh, uh intrusive is what I would say. So like some people wouldn't go for that, but honestly, we know from a detoxification side of things, for those that are like under methylators or they're just not great at detoxing, colonics can be really valuable. And there that is a great tool to use for many different issues. So
And Donna said, and my last question, LOL. How do you find out about microbiomes in babies?
yeah, so that's a really good question. You can actually like take a poo sample and send it in. And so I had to do that on some peds cases where, like baby's not doing well, like, or, sometimes babies have like really severe GI stuff or like eczema or like those kinds of things. So you can do it much like an adult. You send in now, like for the stool testing companies, they like them to be about 2. That's like the baseline before they actually recommend doing a poo test. But like you can do like a standard poo test, like actually like at the doctor, but it's not going to be like the level of stool testing like the functional companies.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dr. Mandy, what are some of the latest findings about the microbiome? Is there anything where you just went, whoa, this is huge?
Yeah, so that like, oh my gosh, there's so much there. So what's interesting is something that I have looked at myself, and especially as we talk about midlife, right? Like, we're starting, our bodies are starting to change and like our hormones are changing, and it's like, how do we optimize our health and continue to age gracefully, which I'm so passionate about, and why looking at these things is so important. But like bifidobacterium, so the one that I was bacteria that I was talking to you about earlier, it's actually been found, like the people that have more robust bifidobacterium in their gut, they actually have a reduction in TNF alpha and cytokines, which are basically inflammatory cells. And these are so important as far as from a biomarker standpoint in inflammation expression and treatment. So when we talk about women's health, you want to have you don't want to have inflammation in your body, right? So actually like working on gut health can be so valuable. Adding in really good quality, clean foods, adding in some supplements that can be valuable and helpful. I think that's really an interesting, piece of research that's been done. Also, something else is they've actually looked at HSCRP levels, which is basically inflammatory markers in the body. And actually, that is a lab test you can get on your basic labs. But they actually found that women that actually had that had significantly reduced amounts of inflammation in the body. And they also saw like an increase in lactobacillus rhamnosus, which is another really valuable strain of bacteria that we have that's actually also associated with like blood sugar regulation in the body. So,
Wow. That just kind of went, whoo, whoo.
yeah. I know, I know. It's like its own world. It's so fascinating. I mean, it's
Is that I mean, I started looking up all the information I could because I was like, what is this microbiome thing and why is it so important?
yeah,
And I just I love information. I'm an information junkie
yeah.
and I always want to know things. So Dr. Mandy, can you share a story of someone that their microbiome was just on the brink? Like
Yes.
and you just kind of brought them back.
Yeah. Okay. So I had a client. I worked with her for over a year and a half. And so I like to frame this for people that actually do want to take a functional medicine approach to their health. It's a commitment, and you're going for transformation, is what I really help women achieve in my practice. And so this particular client came to me. She was overweight, depressed, like just overwhelmed. She's like 50, so on the cusp of menopause, really
Mhm,
struggling with hormones and sleep. And so we spent a lot of time like looking at her labs and creating a protocol for her.
mhm,
And we really worked on optimizing her nutrition, adding in more quality like fruits and vegetables, and like starting the day out with ample protein to help with blood sugar regulation. We also did some continuous glucose monitoring because I find that
mhm,
really valuable tool to see how different foods are impacting blood sugar levels
mhm.
throughout the day. And so she had so many gut challenges, dealt with diarrhea,
Oh my
constant gut
gosh.
pain, gas,
Mhm,
bloating, which makes sense why her downstream hormones were just a wreck. Because I tell people hormones are the downstream impact of everything upstream. So you've got to go
mhm,
up. And she just graduated. This was probably about 3 months ago. She lost over 50
mhm.
pounds. Um,
Wow.
yeah, she did an overhaul. She um, had committed to strength training, which for our midlife
Mhm.
women, that is so important.
So huge.
Yes, and as a therapist over the years, direct correlation
Mhm,
between the women that are doing that and have
mhm.
good bone health outcomes and
Yes,
a muscular side of things as well. Um,
absolutely.
so yeah, so that's a
Mhm,
particular story. And honestly, when we finished, she didn't have gut issues anymore. We took care of all of
mhm.
them. And she was feeling a lot better. So
So what I'm hearing is that it takes time to repair. You have to be patient. You have to do all the things. It's not just a one and done. You've got to, if you're really committed, which it sounds like you have to get your microbiome back so that you can be healthier, you have to be committed to doing what's necessary.
absolutely. Yeah. And it's
Mhm,
just a journey, right? And I think, unfortunately, our society has been trained that, oh, you go in, you pay your 25 or $30 copay, and you go on your way. But I think for the most of us, the majority of us are like, this is not
mhm,
working anymore. And we need
mhm,
solutions. And honestly, I really do feel like the solutions are more of a community health standpoint perspective. So I run group coaching programs in my practice for women,
mhm,
and make it more community, because we're like social creatures, like we need
mhm,
each other, and we're
mhm,
tribal in that. And so I think that that's going to be the key to our
mhm.
massive epidemic of health challenges currently.
I tend to think that as women, when I was talking to Dr. Lakeisha, I said, when you're going through perimenopause or menopause or even issues with your gut, that you feel like you're the only one going through it. Like you feel
Yeah.
so alone. Is that the way it is with the microbiome also in you know, the clients or the people that you help?
Yeah, they're just exhausted, right? They have been
Mhm,
through the system. They've been to multiple doctors, and they just are so tired and overwhelmed. And
mhm,
so that's where, like, I help come alongside of them as their mentor and their coach, and really helping them reclaim their health and their vitality,
mhm.
and getting to the root cause of those health issues so they understand, you know, how to change that.
Wow. We have one more question. I'm not even sure if I know what this is, but
Yeah.
Donna asked, What would you recommend for people who have been diagnosed with C. diff so
Yes.
they do not get it again?
Yeah,
She obviously knows.
that's
Take
a
it away,
great
Dr. Mandy.
That's a great question, Donna. So basically, C. diff is a gut infection that happens for people that are really immunocompromised. So a lot of times in the hospital and over the years, I saw so many C. diff patients, and they're very sick and they're very depleted. So the way to avoid getting that in the future is really to build up that immune system, which is in the gut, and get to the root of the other gut challenges that are there in correcting those things. And so a lot of times those people are malnourished. They don't have enough nutrients to overcome things, and they have to take things slow. So those that struggle with C. diff, it's a longer term thing, but really working on that immune system and that gut health can be so beneficial.
Wow. You know your stuff, Dr. Mandy. I mean, I'm like, what about this question? What about this? How about this? We're getting close to the end of our hour together. Dr. Mandy, can you give us 1 to 3 tips that we could put into play today to help our gut health?
That's a great question. So, what I would number one suggest doing is really working on your stress management strategies. As we age, we become less stress resilient in many ways. And that's partly because of the shift in our hormones that we've got going on. And middle aged women, like, we're so good at taking care of everybody else but ourselves. So, really just working on stress management, that could look like gratitude journaling, grounding outside, moving your body, getting out in the sunshine, just sitting in the sunshine is so important. The second piece that I would say is working on the diet from a gut health standpoint is so important, and really making half of your plate be fruits and vegetables, mainly more vegetables. And then the other half being a good solid protein with a good quality complex carbohydrate. And that might look like a sweet potato, or it might look with like some quinoa. But I really find that people do better with more of an anti-inflammatory, like Mediterranean diet. And last but not least, I would say from a gut health standpoint, I think movement is really important. So I think that as women, like I said, so busy doing all the jobs and tasks that we have to do, that we do know that women that actually exercise, that actually increases brain derived neurotrophic factor, which is as good as an antidepressant. So we're
Yes.
not only helping our gut and moving and getting rid of that trash that we've got stored up, but we're also like really positively impacting our brain health as well.
Dr. Mandy, this has been fascinating. I was so looking forward to this conversation because as you could tell, I'm just all in. I'm like, let me know about this. What about this?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here today. I think you're so well versed in. I just want to go to your website and start looking at different things. And by the way, if you go to smallspacepilates.com/revitalize, you can click on all of the speakers and it will go right to their website. Dr. Mandy, thank you so much for being here today and talking about the microbiome. We're going to continue this conversation. We have one more day left. We're going to be talking sleep with Christine Meyer. Who doesn't need that? Who doesn't need more sleep? So thank you for everyone who are asking the questions. This lives on YouTube. So if you go to youtube.com/Kat Corchado, you can watch the replay. And I'm so grateful, Dr. Mandy, for you being here. So until tomorrow,
Thanks,
bye.
Kat.
You're
See you
so
guys.
welcome.